for those of you who don't know me, Billy Creavin is my name. I'm the Business Excellence Sustainability Manager at Alkermes. I've been working on lean and OpEx for the last 10 or 15 years at the plant. And as Stuart said, I'm delighted to be a member of the Midlands Lean Network. And when we started this a couple of years ago, being a part of the initial team that set it up. Today's agenda, I'm going to just take you through just a little bit of understanding about OEE and what it is. I just want to explain a little bit why it is a useful tool. I'm going to look at the key components that you need to use to calculate OEE. And at the end, I have a worked example and a question and answer session. So what I'll ask you to do that towards the end is just, I'll give you some information about a company, and I actually want you to do the OEE calculation so that you go away from here today understanding it, but knowing how to do the calculation as well, which is highly important. So what is OEE? So the definition of OEE from all the gurus is that it's called overall equipment effectiveness, and it's the standard approach for measuring manufacturing productivity. The tool itself contains 3 distinct measurements that are combined together to give us our overall OEE score. The 3 elements that we measure are availability, performance, and quality. 100% availability means that we have no stoppages during our planned running of the machine. 100% performance means that that machine runs as fast as it was designed to do. And 100% quality means that it is only producing 100% good parts. So a combination of these 3 scores give us our overall OEE score. An OEE score of 100% means we are manufacturing only good parts as fast as the machine is capable of producing with no stoppage time during the runs. Where did it originate? So the term OEE was coined in the early 1980s by Shiichi Nakayama, and he was the founder of the Total Production Maintenance System. So if we really want to look at OEE here, it's really part of TPM, and it's very much focused on industry and manufacturing packaging type units which have lines or machines that produce single or multitude units. So it is really based on an industry and manufacturing side of things or packaging side of things where units are produced as they pass through a machine. Today it is a key operational excellence tool. You will find it in most manufacturing facilities, and anywhere who operates in terms of OpEx would deploy this particular tool. It is recognized for measurement of equipment and process efficiency, and it's a very, very common language in terms of business performance. So if I go to a factory in Japan or I go to a factory in America and we talk about the performance of the machine and performance of the process, and I ask about the OEE figure and I ask for a breakout of the 3 measurements within OEE, I will actually understand how that process is actually running, what the performance of that machine is, and what the quality is like. I would also be able to quickly identify where the problems are with the particular process. So when we look at OEE, there are many parts to businesses, but most of them have these main components, which are your orders coming through, your plan to deliver on those orders, your people, and your resources that you require to produce the product, the equipment to produce the product, and then the delivery to customer. So OEE here is a measurement around the equipment. By taking the measurements around the equipment, we're focusing on machine, but the measurements we actually get from there can actually help us to make many, many decisions about orders, planning, people, and delivery to the customer without focusing on people, more or less focusing on the machine. Why is OEE a useful tool? Well, OEE identifies the percentage of manufacturing time that is truly productive. OEE provides a common language and understanding of the production team. OEE is important because it measures machines and not people, and that's very important when we talk about operational excellence, because when we want to get down there, we want to focus on the process other than people. It captures data and it removes emotion. So we look at data that comes from our OEE, and based on that data, we can make sound business decisions. And it identifies the key bad actors in the process. The other ones it does is it also exposes waste, exposes poor processes and methods. It identifies where we have bottlenecks. It helps quantify time blocks. So in industry, we often talk about, oh, the machine was down for 3 hours. Okay, but there's no quantification on that, so we can actually quantify that. If we know the actual speed of the machine and the units that we normally produce there, we talk more in terms of order or product loss other than time loss. So it will give us a more factor in terms of what we're losing in terms of productivity as opposed to time. There are losses that come in there on the second graph. On the next one here, I suppose OEE, the big thing that OEE do is exposes the 6 big losses. So these are called the hidden factory. So the first of they're broken out into 3 separate areas. So we have breakdowns, setups, and adjustments. These are losses that we incur when we're actually running the machine. So if we plan to run the machine for 8 hours a day, during that 8 hours running during the day, any losses we have there due to breakdown, setups, and adjustments would be considered to be the first of the 6 big losses, and they're called availability losses. And these terms I'm using on the right-hand side will be constant throughout the presentation, A, P, and Q. The performance losses are losses that occur when we're actually running the machine, and this is in terms of small stoppages, blockages, power cuts, issues that affect the smooth running of the machine. And then the other 2 losses are around rejects. So rejects, when we produce product on a particular machine, we lose product. Some of it is at the startup where we have scrap and rework to get the machine humming before we actually run it. And then during production, we'll also have losses there. So the Q losses there are all related to rejects that we create on the line. And these are called quality losses. So they're collectively known as A, P, and Q, and they will form the basis of our measurement for OEE. I suppose being in operational excellence for quite some time, I find the tool extremely useful because OEE, where I measure it on my production floor in terms of my various processes, it gives me data that tells me where I have deficiencies in availability, performance, and quality. And where I see those deficiencies, it helps me make the business decisions about which ones I want to tackle. The data that comes from measuring OEE will actually Pareto that, which will demonstrate to you what the major bad actors are. And then from each of these various buckets, I can establish OEE, or I can establish OpEx initiatives using the tools that you see on the right-hand side. So, for example, if it was an availability issue there, where we haven't a lot of time being taken in setups, etc., I could actually put standard worker there. Maybe it's 6S I use. So I can decide from the toolbox which ones to apply to the particular problem. So that is one of the huge benefits of OEE. So when we get our OEE data, in other words, the data we get there is so good for each of those distinctive areas that I can actually put targeted operational excellence tools to work to try and remediate that. And that creates the full circle for our whole OpEx program on the site. Key data components and calculations for OEE. Well, first of all, we need to visualize what we're actually trying to measure here through OEE. And there, again, we see the 3 buckets that are here, the A, P, and Q, the availability, the performance loss, and the quality loss. And for the availability, what we're looking at is all time is when we look at if we work 7 days a week and we have 8 shifts, how much time you have available, how much time you actually expect to be in the factory with resources available and equipment available. Second step of that, where we look at our planned production time and schedule loss. So the planned production time is the actual time that we will be able, from our overall time, be able to produce. So the schedule loss that we experience there and we take out first is we've known breaks, we have known maintenance routine, planned maintenance routine for the machine. We have planned calibrations, etc. This is things that we do with the equipment before we actually start the process. That's very, very important when we're actually calculating our planned production time. We would not include things in planned production time, such as setups, reconciliations, etc., because they actually happen once the clock has started on our planned production time. Our run time then is where we take a look at, this is the first or A calculation here, at the run time is where we look at how much did we actually get clean runtime from the planned production time we have there, and that gives us our A figure. I'll take you through the calculations for each of these in just a second. The net runtime then and performance loss. So although your machine did run for X amount of hours, during that time, you're going to have performance loss. The machine may have been running slower than you expected. The machine may not be performing to its spec as per the manufacturer. Maybe we turn down the speed of the line. So we need to measure that as well to see if the machine is operating as fast as it should. And then when we have that time when it did actually operate, we had an output from it, which was product. And we need to take a look at the product then, and we need to see the output from that, because we'll have good and bad product there. And really that quality calculation there is looking at all products that was produced, both good and bad, and determining what percentage of the overall products produced, the percentage of good products that we actually got. So I'll just take you briefly through the calculations. So when we talk in terms of the availability one, so all time is the total time to schedule to operate the equipment. And here I've given a small example that if we operate for 5 days a week, 2 8-hour shifts a day, so that would give us 80 hours. So we have 80 hours. We intend to be at the business to manufacture and to process for 80 hours. We're open for business. The planned production time then is all time minus the planned schedule losses. These are losses that we know that we will not have. It will take away from our overall time that we're open, the business is open. So if people are on lunch breaks, if we're performing a PM on the machine, major services, etc., before we actually start, we need to remove those first so that we get a baseline figure for our planned production time. So in this particular case, there are 2 hours of lunch breaks every day, and there's a 4-hour PM as planned. So our 80 hours is then reduced by 10 hours for breaks, 4 hours for the PM. So that leaves us with 66 hours that we have actually planned that we're going to run this machine. Then we need to find out in that particular time, how long did the machine run? So our run time is our planned production time minus any losses that we would have had when we were actually running the machine. It's for either planned or unplanned major stops for when the machine is not running. So once we say the planned production time is there, anything that happens within that in a major sense of a stoppage needs to be recorded here. So on this particular, for this example, there was an 8-hour stop to change between batches. There was a breakdown for an hour, and we took 1 hour to adjust the machine at the start. So from the 66 hours we had available to run the machine, we had to remove 10 hours from that. So effectively the machine ran for a clean 56 hours. We had 56 good run hours from the 66 we planned. So our availability figure is 56 over 66, giving us an 85% availability calculation for this particular run. Availability losses, so there are 2 main reasons from the big 6 losses that occur at this, and it's unplanned stops and planned stops. So planned stops can be setups, adjustments, bringing material in to start the batch, etc. Unplanned stops are where we have actual equipment failures or blockages, etc. So how do you countermeasure that? From the data that comes back from that you collect on the ground for your unplanned and planned stops there, Pareto those, find out which the big ones are, and use the tools to actually address those. And that will start to alleviate the losses you're finding for unplanned stops and planned stops. That's how you would actually tackle that. That's what I do. I get a listing of all unplanned and planned stops during the runs. I then Pareto those in terms of hours. And then I go after most likely the 2 greatest ones. So I'm using the 80-20 rule here. By just going after 1 or 2 things each time, you get incremental improvement. In terms of performance factor, this measures the speed of output from the process when the equipment is running and compares the data collected to the expected speed or the design speed of the equipment. So from our net run time, okay, the machine did run for our net run time, but when it was it running slower than we expected? So for example here, the machine is designed to produce 10 units an hour. The equipment run time from the availability calculation is 56 hours, we know that. So therefore, we expect to produce 10 units over each hour over the 56 hours with an expected output of 560. But we only actually produce 450 units for this, and they are both good and bad. So the units that it produced down the line, there was 450 of those. So our performance factor then is 450 units opposed to 560 units that we expected. This gives us an 80% performance of the machine. It shows us that the machine is running 20%, there's a 20% speed loss. So effective machine speed is not 10 units an hour, but 8 units an hour. These figures are fantastic when you're actually going to plan. Sometimes our plans are made against the spec of the machine that is actually going to produce 10 units an hour. But if you have ongoing data that shows you the actual speed of the machine, this can really help you with your overall planning. The speed loss effectively means that although we were producing we were producing very slow. So the machine lost 11 hours of production in that particular case because it was producing slower than expected. Performance losses or P losses occur for two main reasons from the big six losses: small stops and slow cycles. This means idling and minor stops for small types of adjustments that are less than about 15 minutes. Slow cycles mean sometimes we slow down the machine because it's not able to run currently at its spec. Perhaps when we run it faster, we get blockages. Perhaps we experience overheating, etc. So we turn the machine down. So those are the main reasons why we do that. Again, we need to, first of all, identify the targeted speed for the equipment. If cycles are running slower, we need to list the reasons why the cycles may be running slower. And again, I would Pareto that data to find out where the bigger actors are on that. And again, I would take action against the ones that are showing as the most prevalent. And that way you will get incremental change in terms of the performance factor. Quality. So the quality factor then we measure it's good and bad parts produced. So we were in the fully productive time. We produced units, we produced 450 units, both good and bad. For the quality one here, you must include both good and bad because what you're actually looking at here is the overall production, whether they were good or bad. And for example, there was 450 units, both good and bad produced. And when we look at that a little bit further from our data that we collected, say 350 units were good units and we had 100 reject units. So the quality value then would be, well, we did have 350 good units from the 450 we produced. So the quality of product coming off that machine is 78%. And that's our Q figure. And that data shows that we're losing 22% of our product during production. And we're also 22% of our production time because we're producing product that we cannot sell to the customer. Quality losses from the big six losses usually occur due to production rejects and to startup rejects. And what happens there is you get defects coming off the line and you do not meet your expected yield, which means you have to run your machine longer to get your demand for your customer, or else you have to actually rework there. So again, collect data on rejected material during production runs, categorize by type and originating a location. So from the data collected, go after where the rejects are actually happening on the line. So that's drilling down another layer into your information, but it's actually finding out where rejects are happening and taking actions to remit them. That's how you get your Q figure down. So if I look at the figures I got on the top line here, I had availability of 85%. I had performance of the machine was at 80% and my quality coming off the line was 78%. So my overall score is 53% OEE for this line. And how we do that calculation is 0.85 by 0.8 by 0.78, which gives us 53%. So our OEE score would tell us here that, okay, we can look at the figures that are slightly lower. We could go attacking this and we could say, okay, we're going to try and get 10 or 15% off each of these and get them up nearer to 100%. And we'll take a look at baselines in just a second. But the best approach here is to maybe target maybe about 5% increase, or it could be 2.5 increase, whatever you decide upon across the tree. So for the availability here, I have targeted that I'm going to try and get my availability up to 90%. So I'm going to take a look at what's causing my availability issues there and try and get that up to 90. In terms of performance of the machine, I'm going to try and increase the speed by about 5%. And I'm going to increase my quality by 5% as well to try and reduce the rejects that are there based on the data I have at hand. And that would get my score up to 63%. So these figures standing on their own don't really mean a lot, but when we actually compare them to an international standard, we can see how they do. So we start with 53 and then we move to 63 due to the improvements we implemented. For benchmark scores for operational excellence, 100% is perfect. I don't think there's anybody who can achieve that. It's beyond Six Sigma. but 100% is the overall maximum score you can get from this. 85% would be world class, and these figures come from international standards in terms of manufacturing. So you're comparing yourselves against best in class. 60% would be typical for some manufacturers, but the real OPEX part falls between the 60 and the 85. So you're in that category. Trying to get from 60 to 85 is where most companies find themselves. So that's the incremental. So you should not be really, I suppose, aiming for 100%, but you should be moving towards wherever you are on your benchmark towards 85. 40% would be considered very low, because you would have issues right across all of your 3 factors if your score was that low. The OEE cycle itself within my organization and within most organizations there's 5 major steps within it. So if you were to kick off this, you need to decide on what equipment that you're going to measure or what line you're going to measure. You need to create a data collection system. You would need to have maybe data collection sheets or automated collection sheets and an analytical tool, whether it be a database, etc., Excel, to actually do the calculations from you. And really what you want to do in this, it can't be done by one person. You need to form a team to collect and analyze the data. In other words, you need people who are present during when the machine is being ran, and you also need people to do some of the calculations. Once we collect the data, what's important here, very, very important here, is to make sure our data is correct, because if our data is skewed, what happens is we're taking actions against something that's not true. So data accuracy is huge here. You input the data into a spreadsheet, or it's automatically into some people have programs to do this. I'll show you some people who are offering that kind of thing. And then on a daily, weekly, or monthly, you can actually take a look at where your OEE figures. You perform an analysis as a team, and you have fixed meetings, and we meet on a weekly basis to review our OEE figures, and from there we decide on where our improvements will come. We identify the bad actors from the data we see. We develop an action plan to counteract those bad actions, and we measure our improvements versus our targeted state. So if we target a 2% improvement in terms of one of the APRQs, what we look at is, this is what we're trying to do, and this is how we're trying to see that increased OEE. If we get the improvement, you'll actually see it in our OEE figure, and we'll be tracking that on a periodic basis. So that's a continuous measurement. And then the most important part from our point of view within the factory is visually displaying the improvement activity, and visually explaining to people on the ground what's actually happening. And to do that, we go to what we know as Gemba board within the area, and we actually go through the OEE figures, and we outline where the improvement activity is, and we also look to harvest ideas at the factory floor in terms of the improvements. So it's really around measuring, analyzing the data that you get, improving, and then communicating that story to everybody involved. The communication part, I think, is one of the key pieces of this. So for manual data collection, you could design a sheet like we did in the very beginning on the left-hand side, which went in time incrementals, and we had a run, non-run. When it was running, that was fine. We knew it was running there, and we said it's running for that half hour, it's running. But if we had a stoppage, we'd put a tick on the right box and the red box. If you can see my cursor, well, my cursor on the other screen, but it would be, you can see the green and red boxes in each of the shifts we have there. So if we tick the red box there, we would go to the column for the non-run category there, and we would actually enter what was actually happening during that downtime, which allowed me to create the graph in the middle, which showed us where our bad actors were. And at the same time, my other graph up there is exactly what I explained to you. It's my availability graph for the molding line. So I'm actually on a periodic basis, I'm actually able to see what my OEE figure is for this line. And this is one we're trying to improve at the moment. So you can see that our availability is pretty low between that green line on the top. So that's the database on the right-hand side that is being created by the manual data that's been collected from the sheets. And here, my sheet is mirrored in my database. In other words, when I extract my data, it's very easy to enter the data in the database because it's exactly matching what I have on the sheet. I suppose then we moved into automated data collection. For us, we did look at a lot of different systems that were out there, but we're lucky to have a data analytics team on site, and we have a very strong IT department. So I did a process map, this one here, and it's something that other people should do, and you should look at your availability, your quality, and your performance, and where the data actually is stored in your automated systems. For me, I found that the majority of my data could be extracted from the PLCs on the line. We also have SAP, which will give us the number of good and bad units. And we operate a automated electronic batch record system within Alkermes, which means that we can extract data from the batch runs directly to what we call a data lake. So all of this information is extracted into data lake, and our data analytics people can now combine all that data to give us our OEE output. So we will have an OEE automated OEE output from our 3 lines in terms of how we're performing, instead of having to use a lot of the manual data collection. Still a work in progress, but we're very close to where we need to be on that. The automated data collection system methods, off-shelf solutions. There are a lot of off-shelf solutions out there, but we did have consultation with Kaizen. I know they're involved with Midlands Lean Network and different things as well, and they attend some of our events. But what they have is they actually have an iPad. You can see it there on the bottom, and it's within the manufacturing area, and you harvest data as the machine is running. So you're pressing green if the machine is running, you're entering the number of units produced, you're just putting add. If the machine is stopping, you go to the red, there's a drop down and it asks you why the machine is down. And then the associate puts that in, and then when he goes back to restart, it automatically calculates all those times, what's run and non-run. And it gives a graphical feed out, a graphical display of all that information in the background through an electronic program, and that can be displayed in the area. So even as the data has been collected live, it's updating your screen as to your OEE performance. So you have within a minute of where you are in terms of OEE. It's a very, very strong tool as well. I've given some of the information there if you'd like to contact them or talk to them if you're interested in that type of a system. I'm going to go to a worked example. So I just want to take you through what it would actually look like on the ground and how we would get this. So not sure if you want to do your own calculation with a calculator or a piece of pen and paper there or whatever it is, but just to see that we can actually extract out the figures that we need for OEE. So Company X is a contract packaging firm, and they've decided to utilize a weekly OEE measurement for their packing line. So in this case here, the company operates on a 24/7 shift basis with 3 hours a day allocated for breaks. We know that there's a PM on the line that takes 2 hours a week and a calibration that takes an hour. Can we calculate the planned production time for 1 week? So the planned production time we're looking for here is all time, which is the shifts they work, minus the planned schedule losses, which is for breaks, calibrations, and PMs and major services there. So we just run a quick calculation on that yourselves, and then I'll move to the next screen. So 24/7 shift, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then we lose 3 hours a day for breaks, which is 21 hours in the week. We lose 2 hours for PM and 1 hour for a calibration. I'm just going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to go to the next screen to show you how that's done. So the all time minus planned schedule losses. So the all time is 24 hours by 7 days a week, which is 168 hours. The planned schedule losses are breaks, 21 hours. PM is going to be 2 hours, and calibration is 1 hour, which is 24 hours we're going to lose before we start. So the planned production time is 144 hours. Are we all okay with that?
Yeah,
okay.
fine, yeah.
So part B then, we're going to see how do we actually do versus that planned production time. So in this particular case, we had 144 hours of planned production time for when we took away our breaks and everything like that, and it actually ran for 110. So the availability, the way that's calculated, the A figure, this is the first major figure, is the actual run time divided by the planned production time. So if you want to kind of do that, so we ran out 110 out of 144 hours. In the interest of time, it's 110 hours divided by the 144. So our A figure here is 76%. So part C then, we're going to look at the performance now. So the line is designed and qualified to pack 100 containers an hour. We know the machine ran from 110 hours from our previous calculation there. In actual fact, in our warehouse, we have 8,800 containers were produced. We know that 8,800 containers were produced during the measurement period. Can you calculate the performance factor here? So the performance factor is the actual speed divided by the designed or expected speed. So there's a bit of calculation in that. So we're expecting 100 containers an hour over 110 hours, and we got 8,800. So can you work out what the performance of the machine was there? First of all, work out what the design spec was. So if we ran for 110 hours and we expected 100 an hour, how many containers was that? And then compare it to what we actually got. So I'm just moving it on to the next one here. So the actual speed was, we had 8,800 containers in 110 hours, which is 80 containers an hour. And the design speed was 11,000. We should have got 11,000 over the 110 hours. So our performance for this machine, the way it's performing on the ground, the speed of this machine on the ground is 80 over 100, it's 80%. So it's only producing 80 an hour, and its design spec is 100. So we can see there's a gap there of 20%. So of the 8,800 containers that were produced during the measurement period, we're going to now calculate the quality factor on this. 8,000 were good and 800 were rejected. So calculate the quality factors. The quality factor is calculated as good units produced divided by overall units produced. So good units produced were 8,000, and we produced 8,800 in total. So our quality figure here is shown up as 8,000 divided by the 8,800 that were there, which is 91%. Now, I just want to give you the figures that we had there. So I want you to calculate the overall OEE for this particular line. So the overall OEE is availability percent by performance by quality. So the availability was 76%. We calculated the performance at 80%, and we calculated the quality at 91%. What is the overall OEE figure for the line? So it'd be 0.76 by 0.8 by 0.91. And when we do that, we actually get an overall OEE figure of 55%. Doing comparison to the other lines, is there any commentary on what we think about that 55% and maybe where we take actions on that? And then I'll wrap up and go back to Stuart. So we've just done a calculation on our line. Any comments there on what we think about what's happening there or what we would do?
I might need to look at your availability.
Yeah, certainly would. Availability, an increase in availability, any increase in availability would increase the overall score. But how would you actually do that, the availability piece? So you're down at 76%. You've had 24% loss in availability there, so through downtime. What would you do there?
We'd have to analyze it, wouldn't you, and see what was causing the poor availability.
Yeah. Certainly would. I'd be looking at a breakdown for where the stoppages actually occurred, the major stoppages or setups or anything like that occurred. I would then look at the two biggest ones that are within that. That's what we do. We only take two from each of the ones. Even if this one is showing up 3 and the other one is showing 2 and 2, we try to keep them spread out. So we would look at the two worst actors here, and then I would look at maybe what lean tools could I apply to actually do that. So if it was setups that were taking the longest piece, which is a problem for us at the moment, I'm going to standardize setups down there. I'm going to put standard work in place. We're all going to maybe do some of that stuff offline. So when the machine is running, we're actually setting up the next batch to bring it straight in once we're ready to go. So things like that. In terms of the performance, one at 80% there, it's one that you definitely would be looked at again, because if you're purchasing machines that are supposed to run near 100% efficiency and you're losing 20% through slow running, not running well, maybe you might need to take a look at that as maybe a Kaizen event where you might take that line down for a day and actually do some works on that would improve the speed around there. And on the quality side of things, 1 in 10 of your products being produced are either being recycled and reprocessed, or they're actually being thrown in the bin. So I would certainly look across all 3 of those. I would say in this particular one, this could be maybe a 1 to 2 year improvement strategy to try and bring that score up. But sitting at 55%, how does that compare to the outside world? Anybody commentary on that? If we compare ourselves versus international standards and what I said earlier on, how do you think, where does 55% fall in the ocean?
It depends. If you're in pharma, I don't think 85% is, I think that's like quite a stretch target. Whereas if you're in the food industry, 85 might be achievable world class. So it depends
Yeah.
on what sector you're in, I would imagine.
It certainly would, and it goes back to the actual slide we had on that. So that was in traditional manufacturing and packaging. You may achieve, maybe I would be looking there to get up. My main target at this particular one here would try to get over 60% to try and get on the even keel first, and then after that you're looking at really excellence. You're talking about in some industries it will be much more difficult to get from the 60% to the 85, but at least you will be trying with your OPEX program to try and continually operate between 60 and 85%. That's all I have for today. I did have some time left for question and answers, but I'm also very conscious that Stuart may need to get in there again for a few minutes.
No, Billy, I'm happy to keep the conversation going. I mean, I think I was coming in there, but some questions came in. I thought everybody, I'm glad to see we always say a mark of a good webinar is not how many people sign up, it's how many people turn up and stay. And I think 27 people signed on this morning, and 27 people have stayed for the full duration. So I think that kind of is a good signpost that, you know, people got what they expected, and the material, while difficult, you know, has kept them going. It's I don't think anybody expected to have to be doing really hard maths at this time of a Tuesday morning, but it's really useful. I've often seen when people fall into the trap and they go, oh, 76%, 80%, 91%, that's all great. You might just talk while we're waiting on some more questions to come in there. And guys, I have opened up a poll there about OEE. Are you using it in your business or not? And then which of the 6 big losses that Billy mentioned are evident, do you think, in your business, even if you're not measuring it? Which ones are there? But that talk about world class. And what's world class? What is world class in terms of OEE, and where for you, Billy?
Well, world class in OEE. If you're in traditional manufacturing, you have state-of-the-art machinery and equipment. You will always see. I think what we learn from the experts, and we learn from the stuff like the Toyota way, etc., that striving for perfection doesn't always mean 100%. What it means is that we do our best to try and achieve, you know, as reduce losses, do it as fluently as we can to allow the business to be as prosperous as possible. So the earlier speaker there was quite correct. Within the pharma industry, we have a lot of regulation, and we have a lot of you know, external factors and regulatory guidance. So if we need to make changes, it's pretty difficult to make those changes. And that would apply for the medical device industry as well. But for traditional manufacturing, where you have a packaging operation or not GMP constrained, your ability to make those decisions is much easier. But not forsaking that, I think that the OEE itself, what it does is it kind of focuses your overall operational excellence program to improve across 3 key areas based on data. A lot of OPEX programs, and we would have done it ourselves in the past, would run programs for the sake of actually ticking the boxes to make sure that we were utilizing tools, and we were, you know, we had teams formed to improve various things. But what OEE gives me is when I sit in front of my senior manager and I'm asked to, you know, explain, can you show me or demonstrate to me the difference the OPEX program is making here? So I can actually go to my data from the OEE. I can actually show them where the problems are actually sitting in the 3 different buckets across the process. And I can then show them the actual projects that I've initiated and delivered upon that make a difference in terms of solving problems that are actually real problems, because they're actually turning up in our data to tell us the real problems. And that's where you should be focusing your OPEX program, where it's going to deliver the most value. And that's, let's go after the waste. Let's go after the 6 wastes.
Okay, and I mean, something that always sticks with me, Billy, that you kind of said to us when we were launching the network back in 2018, and we were talking about best practice visits, and you said it's not about best practice because that can put too much pressure on. It's about good practice, and if everybody can show good practice and efforts to make good practice, that's more important than kind of putting ourselves under pressure of best best practice with the visits. A question coming in there. So yes, the recording of the webinar will be shared. Bit of editing and tidying up to do on it afterwards, and then it'll go on to the Lean Business Ireland YouTube channel. And we'll send out a notification of when it's up there. The presentation, Billy has kindly made the presentation available for us to share afterwards as well. So presentation and recording will be there. A question from Gavin. Gavin, do you want to ask that question yourself, or will I read it out for you? Is Gavin here on the call?
Yeah,
Hi,
Billy.
Gavin.
Hi guys. Thanks for inviting me to the call. I think OEE. I'm a believer of it and a user of it. But in some industries, they move the goalposts in the calculations, as in what do they put into each bucket. And my question is that if you do have scheduled PMs, are they baked into before you're calculating availability? In other words, it doesn't have an impact on your percentage, or is the PM have an effect on your overall OEE level? Because some orgs do and some don't, and it's challenging.
It doesn't really. It doesn't.
But just before you answer that,
So the clean line that I always draw there is, if it's something that happens, okay, that something's going to happen with the machine. And we know it's going to happen, and it's something we have planned there, and it's just not going to be available. It could be a bank holiday, it could be a PM, it could be a calibration. Look at this. This award it's fought in many production places. Absolutely, I've had this war myself. But if you take it, if what you're saying is that if you move them down into the reason we take them out for availability is we've actually decided on that overall planned production time. This is the time that we say we're actually going to use, because we've taken out the times we know we're going to be down. So we've got to set a reasonable bar for ourselves. So in this particular time, all our breaks are gone now at this stage, guys. This is when we want to run this machine, and we have to output that. The other losses that happen then, and the availability losses, is really, it's stuff that happens during the time that we said we're going to manufacture. So are you talking about, maybe some people want to take setups out, okay, but you're narrowing your time. You're only transferring one time from one bucket to another. You know what I mean? So it's not going to make that much difference. Some people can make small adjustments, say, oh, we want to put it in there. But then that means that your available time is reduced, and your available time is reduced. You're comparing yourself against a much tighter factor. So the international standard on that is PMs, calibrations, breaks, scheduled holidays when the machine is not going to run, and everything else that happens has to be recorded against the availability. That's the standard I use. That's what we agreed as a group. But it can vary from company to company. Very good question.
Thank you.
Stuart, any more questions?
Sorry, Billy, no other questions just there at the moment. I'm just going to share the results of the poll. So I'm not sure. I think everybody should be able to see the results there. So of the people who answered, we have about 31% are using OEE in their business, 46% aren't using it, and 23% don't know if it's being used in their business at the moment. And again, you can see the kind of the six losses are. The six losses are fairly evenly spread across everybody's experience, and with unplanned stops and small stops being probably the two biggest categories there that are evident. Billy, what I might do, just looking at the time, we might not go to the breakout sessions. Just because we are tight on time. But Billy, I would ask you, OEE's talked about here in terms of production and machines. Is there scope for OEE to be used outside of production, maybe in a service or a service process?
I don't think so, Stuart, and that's just a personal opinion I'd have, because due to its own nature there, and even the description of its nature and its overall equipment effectiveness. So you're talking about machines, and I highlighted that as one of my first slides there. Was about the focus was around the machine producing units. For a service, I think for a service, you're probably better off doing something like a value stream map to get each step of the service there and identify, the timelines around each of those steps to get you. It's really a time saving there, or a process saving, whereas opposed to the equipment here, it's about on the equipment side of things here, it's really about identifying where you have poor machine performance, or you have producing defects from a machine, or we have loss of production time on a machine due to the 6 big losses. I think that's what OEE's focus is. There are other tools in the toolbox that would certainly, I would use a value stream mapping, or I would use process mapping there to take a look at, how process move between people. You would still see your defect number there, but you would also see the timelines around there. And I've done it about recruiting processes and things like that. You see them used a lot in, in the service industries, opposed to OEE. I haven't seen it used where we're trying to improve services.
Yeah, Gavin's just come in there with a point, and I mean, I've also seen it. I've seen it used a fair few times in services where the employee, or as Gavin's put it here, the overall labour efficiency is measured, where you've the availability of hours across the week in terms of 40, and then how many of them are actually productive hours in terms of. So I've actually seen it used in a service desk. Where the output was closed tickets and the time spent on closed tickets. Now, it did take, a revision. I think this is important when we talk about the culture of lean. We had to revise the language when we were talking about people, and we couldn't, so we had to be very careful with the language that was used, and almost the rebranding of OEE for that use. Is that similar with your experience, Gavin? You mentioned there about overall labor efficiency.
Yeah, short, and right, you're rightly to say it as well, is that you just have respect for the people as well. That it's not a KPI bolted onto the side of someone. It's actually it's something to try and help them and bring them along the journey with you. So like it can become sensitive if not implemented correctly.
Yeah, and especially for those businesses that are in the business of billable hours or chargeable time, where knowledge is your tool, knowledge is your output, knowledge is what you're selling. So in that service desk environment, where the effort that somebody expends to resolve the ticket or resolve the issue is it definitely opened up a lot of eyes and started a lot of discussion points as well. One final question before we close off, Billy, from Mickey McDonough. Is there a split between methods of gathering the metrics for OEE calculation between pure data collection from equipment and manual collection through the likes of Kaizen tree that you've managed? Mickey, you can.
Okay, so I certainly say if we were measuring OEE in terms of data collection, we certainly looking at a lot less time in terms of collecting the data on the ground. So the disadvantages of manual data collection is that you need somebody dedicated to it. If that particular person is out, or you don't have other additional people trained, sometimes you have gaps in information, which is a huge downturn really for when you're trying to do OEE. Then you're trying to measure time frame. So within the time frame, on that time sheet I showed you there, I was measuring every half hour on that machine, whereas a Kaizen tree would be actually measuring every minute or every second. So where I would say I'm running here, if the guy stopped the machine after 25 minutes, it still tick the box for half an hour. So I'm not getting a really accurate figure. What I'm finding now with the automated system is I'm doing a comparison. The automated system is picking up that we're actually running a little bit faster than we are, just for that reason, because we have the difference in the time boxes. Just one final point, Stuart, I want to make about data collection. It's just a point I noted here. If you're running a line, okay, you're running a line, it's a lesson we learned. We were actually basing our speed of the line based on what we thought was the restricting factor on the line, which is one station. So I'm talking about multiple station line here, where you have something passing down through multiple machines to get to the end. It's well worked when you start off your OEE journey to determine what's your pacemaking unit there, because you can make an adjustment to speed something up back here, but you have got a restricting factor further down. Do that line balancing act first to find out what you can and can't do, and it's a great tool to use when you're making decisions about where you're going to increase or decrease speeds.
Okay, Billy, that is absolutely fantastic. So guys, look, it's just 4 minutes to it. It's going to wrap up very quickly, let you know about the next event. But beforehand, just think if everybody can just give a virtual round of applause, or turn on your mics and give Billy a round of applause for sharing his time today, and for sharing what is a complex, I suppose, tool that not everybody likes. And Billy assures me that his encore is Taguchi methods, or design of experiments, if anybody really wants to get stuck into the statistics of all of this. Just let me just share the last piece of the session. Guys, we have a LinkedIn group which I'll invite you all to join based on the emails that we have here as well. And through that and Lean Business Ireland, we'll be posting the events and obviously through the LinkedIn page, as well. The next, how you can get involved, which is really important, is turn up to the events, okay, as we mentioned already, and share the events within your company. So don't just come by yourself. Tell people that you're coming. Tell them that there's a topic. Tell them that it's free of charge. It's less than an hour. We'll get in and out, and there's an opportunity just to pick up a bit of knowledge or to make a connection as well. We have an open call if you've got a particular area of expertise, you've got a story to tell about lean in your business, about a topic that you know specifically about, even if it's as detailed as a specific tool that you've used that you like, please get in touch with us and let us know. If you can host a site visit, whether virtually or online, whether virtually or in person, that's also great as well. But really just say hello, connect with myself, Billy, any of the team that are here on the call, and get in touch and get involved, please, really, I suppose. The next event is provisionally scheduled, subject to it not conflicting with other Lean Business Ireland events, for the Thursday, the 5th of May at 11 AM. And in that one, we're going to be talking about a lean culture and what lean culture means. So how to measure lean culture, how to reflect on it and grow within it, and then how to improve it as well. Okay, so it's just 2 minutes to 12. I will let you all get out of here, get back to work and do some real work. And thank you all for your time. And thanks again to Billy for a really great session and lots of detail there as well. Cheers, everyone.